Hello everyone. I'd like to talk to you about a topic in probability, which is the famous Bayes rule. So this video is for people who may be studying probability or who have studied probability in the past and who are mostly comfortable with basic probability concepts, but who might be having a little difficulty understanding what this Bayes rule is really all about, since it looks a little more complicated compared to other introductory probability topics. So let's go ahead and get started. So the equation you see on your screen describes the Bayes rule. So in a sense, Bayes rule is really just this equation. But unfortunately, this equation looks kind of scary and is also hard to remember. But most importantly, it doesn't really directly tell you what the Bayes rule is really doing. So in the following minutes, I'll try to give you some intuition about what the Bayes rule is really all about, what it does, and most importantly, why it is such a beautiful and an important result that we love so much. So, when I think about the Bayes rule, instead of the equation, here is what I usually think about. So, suppose you are asked a conditional probability question, which means what is the probability that some event A happens, given that you know that some event B has also happened? You start thinking about this problem, and quickly it becomes clear that this is not one of those easier and more obvious problems. So you start thinking to yourself, gosh, this is one of the more difficult ones. But then you notice that if the question was asked the other way around, in other words, what's the probability that B happens given that A happens, it would have been such a simpler problem. If you ever feel like you're in that situation, the chances are the Bayes rule is your solution. What's great about the Bayes rule is that it lets you answer a difficult and less obvious question by simply answering a couple of easier and more obvious questions. So this is why we like the Bayes rule so much. So the answer to your difficult question, once you know to apply the Bayes rule, almost comes for free. So what I have talked about so far is about why the Bayes rule is such a useful tool. Now let's start talking about why it's also such an important tool that has so much widespread use in a lot of real-life applications. For example, think about the voice recognition app on your smartphone. So what you do is you speak into your microphone and the smartphone app figures out what you just said and then completes the task that you just asked. Now, in a sense, in very simple terms, what this smartphone app is really doing is solving the following problem. Given that I received this sound signal, what is the most likely word that this person has just spoken? Now, if you have any experience with these voice recognition apps, you probably guess that this is a very, very difficult problem. Now, let's think about the other way around, which is the opposite problem, which would be, given that I know what word this person has just said, what would the sound signal most likely look like? Now, this question is a little more easier to address than the other one. So for example, what you can do is you can ask your friend to speak a certain word into the microphone and record the signal and look at it. You may ask him to do this many times, or you can ask a lot of your friends to do the same thing many times, and at the end you will at least have a rough idea about what the signal would likely look like given that that word was spoken. And after that, you simply watch Bayes rule do its magic. Of course, this is not the only application where the Bayes rule is used. There are so many others, and I invite you all to look them up. So this video was about why the Bayes rule is so useful and important. In the next video, through a simple example, we'll see the Bayes rule in action and how it works. Thank you very much for listening.